course of time, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So, dear participants, now study sessions. So, may I invite Dr. Suhail Ajmal to present his report?
Hello.
Yes.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible. Please continue.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to all the participants. It is still morning, I think, 11:52. So
Oh, it's off. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Suhail Ajmal, and I will be presenting a report on the 53rd and 54th session of the 85th General Orientation Course, or FIP program, being conducted by the HRD Center of University of Kashmir on the morning of 17th March 2021. So this session began with a welcome note by the coordinator, Dr. Isakir, followed by the delivery of the previous session's report by Dr. Mudassir Ahmed. The moderator of the session then introduced the resource person for the morning session, Professor Mohammad Hussain, Dean and Head, School of Law, University of Kashmir. The title of Professor Mohammad Hussain's lecture was Plagiarism and Copyright Issues in Research. It was a two-part lecture. The first part of the lecture covered intellectual property rights and copyrights, while the second part was supposed to cover the topic of fair use doctrine. The lecture began with an introduction to two types of properties, movable or tangible properties, as well as non-tangible properties. Intellectual property is a form of intangible property, as described by the worthy speaker. The expert then described copyright as a non-tangible right available to a person as a statutory right, which another person could purchase and commercially exploit. It is sometimes seen as a monopolistic right. Copyright subsists in different types of works, as explained by the resource person. For example, in literary, musical, dramatic, or artistic works, as well as in cinematographic films. Under the Indian Copyright Act 1957, copyright is valid for the lifetime of the copyright holder, plus 60 years after that. For cinematographic films, however, the copyright is valid for 50 years instead of 60 years. And after this period, the work goes into the public domain. So a person acquires the copyright by registering his work with the State Copyright Board, which is present in all the states of the country. But even without such a registration, the original owner of a work is still able to have recourse to legal action in case of copyright infringement. He just has to prove that he is the real owner of the work. Under the Berne Convention, however, a person is required to register his work in order to claim copyright over it. So the Berne Convention, it works internationally across all countries. But the previous provision, that is only for the only valid for India. So in India, the original owner of a work still has recourse to legal action, even if he hasn't registered his property with the copyright board. So according to the law, any commercial exploitation of copyright work without permission of the owner can leave you liable to legal action from the owner of the work, right? Then the resource person explained that legally there are only three ways we can use a copyrighted work. The first is if you use it with prior permission of the owner, usually by paying a monetary sum, which is called the royalty. The second method is if you use it after the copyright of the copyright holder expires, which is, as explained previously, the lifetime of the person of the copyright holder plus 60 years. And after which the work goes into the public domain. And the third method is if you use it under the exception of fair use. Right? The expert then explained what is meant by fair use. Section 52 of the Indian Copyright Act and WTO's TRIPS agreement allows the reproduction and use of a copyrighted work by academics, teachers, students, and researchers for academic and research purposes. And such access to information or knowledge by students and researchers is considered a human right because it falls under the purview of the fairness doctrine. And the dissemination of knowledge by academics is for public good. Therefore, it does not constitute copyright infringement as per the welfare doctrine. So after this, Professor Hussain covered the legal aspects of plagiarism. Plagiarism refers to using somebody's original research or literary work without properly attributing the author. So as compared to copyright infringement, plagiarism simply represents some other person's literary or research work as your own. So it involves stealing and using ideas or writings from other people in your own name. Plagiarism is basically an unethical or immoral act and falls in the domain of ethics, as stated by the resource person. It is a form of academic misbehavior, academic dishonesty, or intellectual dishonesty. The expert clarified that plagiarism can occur without infringement of copyright. This is very important. Plagiarism is yet to be identified as a legal wrong.
Dr. Suhail Ajmal, have you muted yourself? It seems you have muted yourself. No, he has got disconnected perhaps. Yes, you had got disconnected. Please continue. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry for that. So the expert clarified that plagiarism can occur without infringement of copyright. Plagiarism is yet to be identified as a legal wrong, although it demerits the researcher or academician. The expert concluded the lecture by highlighting the necessity of bringing the practice of plagiarism under the purview of the law. The second part of the lecture was supposed to cover the fair use doctrine in more detail. However, due to the insufficiency of available time, the topic was decided to be covered in a different session. So at the end of the lecture, there was a question and answer session followed by a vote of thanks by the coordinator, after which the participants proceeded for a lunch break. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suhail Ajmal. Very well presented, very detailed report. That is the way we want it to be. It should be a detailed report and it should cover all aspects of the session. Thank you very much once again. And now I would invite Dr. Samina Bashir to present her report, please. Dr. Samina, are you there? Dr. Samina Bashir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, please present your report.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here to present the report of yesterday's, that is 17th of March 2021, that's the afternoon session. I would say we were enlightened by Professor Mehrajuddin sir, who was the worthy resource person and who is the Vice Chancellor of Central University of Kashmir. Professor Mehrajuddin sir talked about the state of higher education in developing countries, and especially he talked about Kashmir and from the Indian scenario. Professor Mehrajuddin sir talked about the mushroom growth of universities in Kashmir and as well as India. And what the biggest problem he talked about was, although there has been mushrooming of the universities, however, the quality of the research, that is the basic need of the studies, the quality of the education is not as good as it should be. What Professor Sahab emphasized on was that we should look into the scenario, we should look into the reasons that has led to the decrease in the quality of education. He gave us a stats. For example, he said at the time of 1947, there were less than 20 universities in India. However, currently there are more than 1,000 universities in India. Although this much of growth in education has taken place, however, the quality has reduced. The quality of reduced, he asked a question, not only to teachers, but to the parents, as well as the system, that who is responsible for all this. He also quoted, he also showed one of the newspapers that said that more than 50% of the educated youth are unemployable, which was even emphasized by Professor N.N. Huda a few days back. Now, the problem is, due to this, our youth go into what he called as peace, where peace stands for pressure, E for emptiness, A for anxiety, C for curiosity, and E for escapism. Like, one of the reasons that this escapism is unemployment, and somewhere it has led to the issues like violence and drug addiction. So the parameters, although it's not easy to check the parameters that like we cannot check the there are not specific parameters to check the quality of education. Like in case he gave an example that cloths, we can easily check the quality of a cloth or a steel rod, but we cannot check the quality of a human being easily. So it was, so let's as teachers, what he urged us, that as teachers, let's see who is responsible. Is it the teacher? Is it the parent? Is it the society? What has led to the degradation of educational system in our society? Where he gave an example that the need of higher education was GK, TK, and EK, where he said generation of knowledge, followed by transmission of knowledge and application of knowledge. It's very important to give this type of education to our youth, that they start critically thinking, they become innovative in their fields. It's very important that they become innovative in their fields. So as teachers, what is important, what he emphasized, it was a very encouraging speech, where he said that as teachers, what we should do is that we should prepare by our class, before our class, so that we can give a class which is perfect, because today's students are smart. They have smartphones. He gave an example of Google Uncle, that they are smart. They know everything even before the class. So it's very important. He gave, Professor Sahab gave a lot of personal examples where he said that the research is degrading in our society. Like he said, if we have me, my guide, and his friends, that's how the research is conducted in our society. So these were some of the good examples, which was followed by a vote of thanks to Professor Mehrajdeen Sahab by Professor Geer, who's the coordinator of our program. Now, this was followed by a presentation by one of our worthy participants, Dr. Sameer Mahidi, who is an assistant professor at GD Bandipora in Kashmiri. This was a completely different presentation to our field, but what was the beauty of his presentation was that he talked about the unconscious mind and how some memories, how some things are stored in our unconscious mind, which leads to we can say, which produces a poet. Like the heading of his presentation was literature and psychology. So what he said, how we develop psychology, for example, how a poet develops a poetic psychology is by some of the traditions and some of the experiences he has gained throughout his life. So not only from his life, from some of his ancestors and other such experiences. This was followed by a very good presentation by Professor Neeraj Kumar Saab, who talked about the vaccines. Now, we can say this is the topic of vogue in current world, because vaccines are responsible for, we can say, if we have to continue our population and our world, vaccines are very important. He talked about active immunity and the passive immunity. And he also talked about the types of vaccines. Like, for example, we have attenuative vaccines, that is, their pathogenicity has been reduced, or we have live vaccines, or we can have also the peptide vaccines, which are small parts of an antigen that are injected into a person, and so that develops an immunity in an individual to a particular pathogen. So he talked about how humoral immunity, we can also develop vaccines which are directly antibodies injected into the a person. That was the last presentation, and that Professor Geer Saab ended the session yesterday. Thank you, sir. Sir, you are not audible.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samina Bashir. Thank you very much for that
Thank you, sir.
elaborate report once again. That is the way we want it to be. Today somehow the participants are in a very active mode. They are interacting, they are asking questions, they are participating. The rapporteurs are taking full responsibility and presenting detailed reports. So that's how I was expecting this course to be. Thanks a lot to the rapporteurs for
Thank you, sir.
preparing those
Thank you
details.
very
And
much.
fortunately, we had enough time today because due to some unavoidable circumstances, our resource person of this particular session, Mr. Talat Parvez Rohila Saab, could not be present due to certain unavoidable circumstances. He won't be presenting today. And therefore, we had ample time for these detailed reports. So since we don't have the talk by Janab Talat Parvez Rohila Saab, and this time, I thought of earlier we had a brief discussion when one of the participants was making a presentation on the personalities, various types of personalities. And then we discussed briefly what are the deviations from the normal behavior, normal personality traits. So I thought I will just cover this aspect in little more detail, and then we can utilize this particular slot for that purpose. So I'll be making a presentation myself to complete this slot, and I will be talking about the personality disorders, which will help you as teachers to know more about the personalities, to know how to deal with the various different types of personalities in a classroom situation. What will be the role of a teacher in case there are any abnormalities in behavior, in case there are any deviations in the personality traits in the classroom situation. So I'll be talking about that, and therefore I'll be making this presentation on personality disorders. The exact title of the presentation is a role of teachers as caregivers for students suffering from personality disorders. So is my presentation visible, Dr. Mudassir Saab?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So I have made this presentation earlier at the Institute of Advanced Studies in Education in 2019 on the 11th of June. I don't know how many of you were present in that at that particular place. Was there any participant who has attended this presentation there at the College of Education, now renamed as Institute of Advanced Studies in Education? Okay, it seems none of the participants was present. So I'll continue. I'll just be discussing what is the role of teachers as caregivers. See, you are not doctors, you are not psychiatrists, you are not clinical, psychologists who can give any care to such students who are suffering from personality disorders, but at least you can understand what are the different types of personality disorders, and that will help you deal better with such people whom you suspect may be having any kind of a disorder, so that you can guide them towards medical care, or you can guide them towards psychological psychiatric care, or some kind of counseling by a clinical psychologist. But at least you should know what are the different types of personality disorders and how to deal with such type of people in a classroom kind of a situation, and what kind of care you can give at the very basic level, at the very minimum level, at the very starting level, what kind of care you can give to such students. Why do you need to give care to such students? Because as per Schulman, good teaching is not, a good teacher is not only about teaching. You have to address to all the needs of the student, whether it is counseling or whether it is caregiving, and you have to make the students visible, engaged, attentive, and participating in the classrooms. And good teaching, as just now Professor K. Maran said, has to be passionate, and it should induce or it should evoke an emotional response from the students. They should be emotionally touched with what you are talking to them. They should be emotionally connected, and then that makes them passionate. So good teaching will evoke and engage practical and analytical thinking. It will evoke critical evaluation, constructive mindset, and problem-solving skills among the participants, among the students. And therefore, good teaching will positively impact upon the students' values, commitments, creative ideals, and identities. So we normally think that teaching is all about conveying the content, conveying the syllabus, completing the syllabus. We hardly think about touching upon the students' values, commitments, creative ideals, and his identities. And this was as per David Schulman, president of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. And then empathy is very important. When you talk about caregiving to people suffering from personality disorders, you need to have empathy as a teacher. Empathy is critical to good teaching, especially to those students who are emotionally disturbed, who are conflict affected, who are behaviorally disordered. And we work with such youngsters who perceive their worlds differently, because students, some of them are teenagers, some of them are in their adolescence. They perceive world differently. We have to view the world from their perspective, from their insights, from their vision and understanding. And that alone will lead us to being empathetic. This empathy will provide the ability to know the student in the way they look at the world, to interpret that understanding back to the student, and then provide boundaries of the reality, because they may be sometimes living in a fantasy world, in a world of their own imaginations. So we need to guide them, orient them into the right direction, and tell them what is the truth, what are the boundaries of this world which they are viewing, and what are the boundaries of reality, so that they should not deviate much from these boundaries of reality. And why do we need to give them, see, normally caregiver is a term which is used for a doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist is a caregiver. How can a teacher be a caregiver? Teacher can also be a caregiver, because teachers have an important enabling role in the holistic development of the student. And when they have a role in the holistic development of a student, they have to engage them in counseling. Apart from imparting knowledge, apart from imparting skills, they have to develop critical and innovative thinking among them, engage them in consultancy, research, extension work, and prepare them for the future challenges. And modern day teacher has not only to be a teacher, but a friend, a philosopher, a guide, a counselor, a mentor, and a caregiver too. Some of these aspects were discussed in detail other day by Professor Aman Huda also, who said what are the various attributes of a good teacher. So in that he said teacher has to be a good communicator, a leader, a counselor, a mentor, a philosopher, a guide. These are some of the very important attributes of a good teacher. And unless we inculcate these attributes, unless we cultivate these values and these qualities, we can never become good teachers. Because teachers as caregivers can serve as a rich and powerful resources for their students. Those students who are frustrated, who are helpless, rebellious, and angry, for them we can serve as very rich and powerful resources by caregiving. That is, here caregiving means having some empathy, being sympathetic, being empathetic, and being caring about the student, caring about his feelings, his emotions, his what kind of situation he is living in. Now here you may ask me a question. You have a class of 80 students or 100 students. How is it possible for you to give care to each and every student in a big classroom of 80, 100 students? So my answer would be that it's not necessary that at one particular time you have to give care to all the students. You can, if you identify that some student has got some emotional needs, some kind of need which that he needs some counseling, or he needs some hand holding, he needs some listening. If you can't do anything, at least you can listen to the problem, and you can invite him to your staff room someday and listen to his problems, listen to his concerns. And this can be done at the most once in a week. You don't have to do it daily. Once in a week, if you listen to even one student, and to a fair extent, you can contribute and you can address the needs of such students. Therefore, that is what is expected of a teacher, that caregiving, and as has been clarified by DRO, that students value adults who value them. Students value those adults who value the students, because there is every student who is living in seemingly intolerable situations have a pro-social adult outside their home. So if they don't have any adult who is listening to, who is sharing his concerns, who is being empathetic to them in their home, they will look for some adult outside their home. And therefore they will start valuing that adult who values them. And we as teachers also need to value them. We don't need to denigrate them, humiliate them. We don't need to insult them. We need to value them. We need to give them due care and due patient audience. And we need to listen to their problems and concerns. Nordings has also articulated that student-teacher relationship provides a very rich arena in which students can be transformed. Transformed by what? By an ethic of care. So he says that by an ethic of care, we can transform a student. If he has any mental issues, any psychiatric problems or personality-related issues, we can transform him by the ethic of care. And what does this care translate to? This care translates into interventions that are in the best educational, emotional, and psychological interest of the student. When the interventions are in his interest, in his educational interest, in his emotional and psychological interest. That is what is meant by care. And when students fail to receive this kind of care within the classroom, they are often reduced to a case or a number. We just remember our students by their roll numbers. We don't remember them by their names. Sometimes it is not even possible to remember 80 people by their names or 100 people in the class by their names. But at least some of them we can try to remember by their. We should not reduce them to a number or a case. And then is this a big problem? Like we other day, madam was telling about personalities. But is personality disorder a major problem? Is it a problem worth consideration or worth discussion? Yes, of course it is, because it has been found that 1 in 5 young adults has a personality disorder. 1 among every 5 young adults has a personality disorder. The Dr. Mark Olson of Columbia University has reported that 1 in 5 young American adults has a personality disorder. So this figure has come out from America. So if you can imagine, if Americans can have 1 in 5 people living in conflict situations like ours, we can expect only it to be worse rather than better. So this particular study done by Mark Olson was based on face-to-face interviews among 500 young adults, young students aged between 19 to 25 years. And the study also found that less than 25% of these college-going Americans had mental problems, and less than 25% of them were getting any kind of treatment. So all those students who were having any mental issues, only less than 25% of them were getting treatment. So here we can expect the situation to be even worse, because it should alert not only the students and parents, but also the deans, principals, directors, and the heads of the institutions. And the mental health services should be provided to the students, because personality disorder is highly prevalent in particularly those who are psychiatric outpatients and inpatients. 30 to 40% of outpatients in psychiatric OPDs are suffering from personality disorders, and 40 to 50% of inpatients of psychiatric departments have personality disorders. Particularly those people who are in prisons, who are undergoing some kind of trials, 78% of male remand prisoners have been found to have personality disorders, and 88% of young male sentenced offenders, so those who have been sentenced, 88% of them have been found to have personality disorders, while as only 70% who are remand prisoners but yet to be sentenced, yet to be convicted. Based on the existing criteria, the research has suggested that holistically, globally, around 10% of general public has personality disorder. So this is the global situation. This is the worldwide condition. 10% of the global population is believed to suffer from some kind of personality disorder. But 10% means a huge. If there is a population of 7.5 billion, so you can see, you can imagine what is the number of people suffering from personality disorders. Now, in conditions like ours, wherein there is a conflict situation going on for we are suffering from experiencing turmoil situations for a long period, most of our juveniles, most of our young adults can be expected to be suffering from personality disorders. 7 out of 27 juveniles at the Harvan home were found to be suffering from psychiatric problems. And then there are 2 types of psychiatric illnesses. First of all, we call them as both of them as mental disorders, whether it is a psychiatric disease or a personality disorder. Both of them come under the purview of a mental disorder or a mental illness. So what is a mental disorder or a mental illness? It is a psychological or behavioral pattern that is associated with distress or disability, and which is not considered a part of normal development of a person's culture. Whenever anybody is suffering from severe distress or disability and is not considered to be part of normal development of a person, we say that he is suffering from some kind of mental disorder or mental illness. And such disorders are defined by a combination of components. They can affect different domains of our mental faculties. These can be classified as affective disorders. Affective are those which affect the mood, the range, intensity, liability, and appropriateness of emotional response, which affect our emotional response, which affect our mood. Those are known as affective disorders, and they can have a different effect. That is, they can affect the mood to a different level depending upon the range, intensity, and liability of our emotional response. Then these mental disorders can also affect the domain, cognitive domain or behavioral domain, our behavior may change. Cognitive means the process of learning, how we look at the world, how we comprehend the world, how we acquire knowledge, how we experience the situations around us, our different senses, how they work. This is the cognitive domain. And then the perceptual, the ways of understanding and interpreting things. I may perceive my neighbor as to be my enemy. I may perceive this car behind me following me. That is the perception. If there are derangements, there are abnormalities in these, we call it a mental disorder. So mental disorders are classified basically as per the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Now the 5th edition has also come. This is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, is published by the American Psychiatric Association. Here I am showing the 4th text revised edition, but now the 5th edition is also available. Now this Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, in which they list the various symptoms of various psychiatric disorders, various mental illnesses. Based on those symptoms, the doctors can diagnose a patient as having a particular psychiatric disorder. And they classify these mental disorders broadly into 2 types, Axis 1 and Axis 2. Axis 1 covers the psychological disorders, that is, those disorders which include mood disorders, schizophrenia, eating disorders, anxiety disorder. All these psychiatric disorders or psychological disorders are covered under Axis 1. So here everything will come under here. That is the psychosis, neurosis, depression, anxiety, mania, everything will fall under this axis. And where the peculiar feature of this axis is that they have a tendency to be cyclical. They come and they go. Today they have a depression. After 7 days, they may not have the depression. Then after 1 month, he may have the depression again. So they have a tendency to be cyclical. They come and go. They are recurrent, acute disorders. These are acute conditions. There's a certain flare up in the depression or certain flare up in the anxiety of the person. This remains for some time, but these are mostly acute conditions, but not chronic conditions. Chronic which lasts for too long. Then comes the Axis 2. Axis 2 is the one which covers the personality disorders, wherein personality disorders are classified. And these personality disorders are stable rather than cyclical. These are stable in nature. That is, they are chronic disorders. They remain for a prolonged period, but they are of mild intensity and they sustain and remain for a prolonged period. That's why they are stable rather than cyclical and are chronic in nature. So this is where the second axis comes in. This personality disorders fall under this Axis 2. They are chronic in nature, they are stable, and they are not cyclical. That is, personality disorder remains there. If somebody has a personality disorder, it remains for a long period. It is not like depression which will come and go. It's not like anxiety which will come and go. And the patients themselves might not be knowing that he or she is suffering from some kind of a personality disorder. And he may not feel the need to consult a doctor or a psychiatrist, and he may think that the personality which he has is the best personality. This is the standard personality, and he may consider other people as having an abnormality. So this is where these kinds of disorders are situated. Then there are Axis 3, 4, and 5 also under this Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, but we will not go into that those axes. So under the Axis 1, as I said, there are several disorders, but Axis 2 covers the personality disorders. Now, as per this Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 4th text revised edition, I am using 4th text revised edition because the criteria are more well explained over here. My intention here is to explain the different types of personality disorders. That's why I am resorting to text 4 edition, because in 5th edition, the criteria is not so much elaborate. That's why I'm using the criteria of the 4th text revised edition, so that it becomes clear to you what are the various and whom can we label as a psychiatric personality disorder. What are the essential characteristic features that a person should have so that he can be diagnosed as a personality disorder patient. First is that this personality disorder should be long-lasting pattern of thought or feeling and behavior which is different from most other people in the same culture. It should be a long-lasting pattern. For example, somebody is too sadistic, or somebody is too isolated, secluded, lonely. So if it is persisting for a very long period, we can classify it as a personality disorder. It has to be long lasting. It is not that somebody is suffering from some kind of personality disorder only for a few days. We cannot label him as a personality disorder, but unless it is long lasting. And the criteria includes that the personality problems should be present in at least 2 of the following areas. 2 of these following domains should be affected: the domain of thought, emotion, personal relationship, and behavior. If any of these 2 domains are affected, then we can label it as a personality disorder. If only suppose behavior is getting changed, we cannot call it. Or if only emotions are getting changed, somebody is experiencing intense emotions, but unless 2 of them are affected, then only we cannot label it or diagnose it as a personality disorder. And the patient who has experienced personality problems should have experienced it in most part of his life, including at work, at school, or at home. Everywhere his behavior should be the same. For example, the person is suspicious of everybody. He is paranoid. So he should be paranoid or suspicious at everywhere, at his work, at his school, as well as at his home. In all parts of his life, he should be behaving this in the same fashion. Then only we can say that he is suffering from a personality disorder. These personality problems must be upsetting to the patient or frequently causing problems in his relationship with others. So when his personal relationships at home, among his relatives, at his office, at his school, at his college, everywhere the relationships are affected. So there is a suspicion that we can have that this person might be suffering from some kind of personality disorder. And the patient's personality problems typically begin in teenage years, and then they continue throughout adulthood. They mostly begin in the teenage years and then continue throughout the adulthood. This is the typical eruption of these personality disorders. This is the typical pattern which we observe in personality disorders. And then the personality disturbances should not be as a result of drugs or as a result of alcohol. Somebody is consuming drugs or alcohol, then his personality is changing, behavior is changing, emotions are changing. But that is not classified as a personality disorder, because here there is an extrinsic or external factor. It has to be intrinsic. It has to be embedded in the personality, not because of drugs or alcohol or because of any other illness. So these are the criteria which are important as per DSM-4, by virtue of which we can classify a person as having a personality disorder. Now, in the previous participant presentation, Madam had given us the big 5 traits, but then there are also bad 5 traits. So there are both positive and negative personality traits. The positive ones we call the big 5, and the negative ones we call the bad 5. Big 5 traits have been discussed by her. For example, extroversion, outgoing personality, sociable, enjoying being with others, and usually feels happy. Opposite of this is introversion, avoidance of other people, usually having a mistrust, limited friend circle, one who prefers loneliness and seclusion. Then another good trait is conscientiousness. That is one who is able to see through things. He is able to organize himself, remain focused and goal oriented in his life. But opposite of this is lack of discipline. Person is impulsive. He can hit anybody any point of time. He can become impulsive, lose control over his emotions, and he can have attention problems. He will be lacking discipline in his life. Then another good characteristic is agreeableness. One is open to good suggestions, open to constructive criticism. He is empathetic, he is pro-social, he is submissive, and he also feels compassion for others and is concerned about others. So agreeableness is the good trait. Opposite of this is antagonism. When the person has antisocial attitudes, he has contempt for social relations, especially the need or vulnerability. So this is antagonism. The person has antisocial tendencies. He has a contempt for social relations. He doesn't respect other people, respect other relations, and he looks down upon people. That is antagonism. Then the good trait is openness to experience, being curious about the world, open to new ideas, is openness to experience. And the rigidity is the opposite of one who is rigid, who is lacking curiosity, he's not open to change. Another good one is the stability. One is emotionally stable. He is able to regulate his emotions, accommodate people of different behaviors. He is able to have a coherence of his thought and behavior. While as the opposite of this is neuroticism. A person is mostly suffering from anxiety, emotional instability, tendency to feel bad, frequently feeling anxious or sad. So this is as per the Shiner's classification. We have the big 5 and bad 5 personality traits. And then there are, when we peel off the personality of any person, peeling back the layers of personality, there are different layers of personality which are built upon any person during the lifetime. A person is born with some kind of traits, then during the course of his lifetime, several other layers are built upon one after the other. For example, the layer 1 at the lowest bottom, at the bottom is layer 1, which is evident at birth. One's basic temperament. For example, one child is born, he always keeps crying. Another child is born, he keeps mum, he doesn't cry so much. One child is born who is always fussy, but one child is born who is always peaceful and who is cooperative. So this is the basic temperament. With this layer of personality is the basic personal temperament, innermost layer of the personality, which determines early interactions of a boy or a girl with one's environment. So the person at the time of his birth may be calm or easily agitated. A person may be, the boy may be active or he may be happy versus lethargic and fearful. And this begins the formative process for developing one's personality. Now the formative process is initiated and the personality starts to develop once a person is born. Then the second layer is the one which emerges and evolves early in the life because of various early lifetime experiences. And this profile is stably developed by early adulthood. For example, if there is child abuse or any kind of witnessing of riots or wartime situations, earthquakes, this will shape up the personality of the adolescent, and this will shape up the personality of the boy or the girl accordingly. So the big 5 is an example of taxonomy used to describe the general sketch of one's overall style. So this layer comprises of the core personal traits which emerge and evolve in the early life through various early experiences. Then third layer is that of the personal adaptations. Now, so you have the basic personal temperament, then you have certain core personal traits which you have assumed during your early childhood. Now comes the personal, now you start adapting to different situations, different circumstances in the life, and you start making changes in yourself. You start adapting things. A wide range of adaptations are developed in specific contexts and circumstances throughout one's life. So when we are faced with different kinds of people, different kinds of situations, we also adapt to them. We try to gel with the situations, the circumstances in which we are living or working. And this makes our third layer, that is the personal adaptations. And the profile of adaptations fills in the details of the general sketch from layer 2. Whatever blank spaces were there in the layer 2, that those blank spaces are filled through these adaptations. So that completes our third layer of our personality. And then comes the fourth and the final layer, the personal narrative identity. That is, this is an internalized, evolving narrative of the self, how you view yourself, how you consolidate yourself, how you, what perspectives you have about your own self as well as the external world. And this will integrate the individual with the broader society and will provide some degree of unity, purpose, and meaning. So how you integrate, how you look at the situations, how you introspect, and how you look at your own self, and how you internalize with different narratives of the self as well as that of the world. So this will comprise your fourth personal narrative. Just a minute. So this will comprise of the fourth layer, that is the personal narrative identity layer, and this will depend upon the person's integration, how you integrate yourself with the broader society, and how you will provide different degrees of unity, purpose, and meaning to yourself. Just a minute, please. So these are the various layers of one's personality which are shaped during the course of life. And now I come to the various types of personality disorders. So personality disorders are classified into 3 broad categories, 3 broad clusters. One is cluster A, that is the odd or eccentric cluster. Then there is cluster B, which comprises of the impulsive or dramatic cluster. And then there is cluster C, which comprises of the anxious or fearful cluster. So these personality disorders, when there is a deviation from the normal personality behavior, normal traits, we call it which is affecting the person in which is affecting the person everywhere, whether in the personal life, work life, in the college, in the society, in the neighborhood, at home, and his relationships or normal function is getting affected. We call it a personality disorder. So under cluster A, which is the odd or eccentric cluster, the different types are paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. What is paranoid personality disorder? A person who cannot trust anybody, a person who always is suspicious of others, and he is always prideful and self-reliant. He wants to do everything himself or herself because he cannot rely on others. He cannot trust others. He is always suspicious of others, looking at others with a suspicious eye. He's always prideful, boastful, and thinks that he is the ultimate. Nobody can be as comparable to him. And he is always in an agitated mood, in a paranoid kind of a behavioral situation. And this is what is known as paranoid personality disorder. So this kind of a person, you will see, he will try to do everything by himself. He will not distribute work because he doesn't trust others. He will not have too many these associates, and he would like to rely on himself only. Then second type of disorder is the schizoid disorder. Schizoid disorder means this is an extreme of introvertness. So when a person is too much introvert, too much isolated, too much lonely, too much secluded, and so much so that he will not mix with others, socialize with others, interact with others. He would not like to share his emotions with others. He will not have too many friends. He will not have a very good social circle. So inability to form and lack of interest in social relations. He will be always distancing himself, keeping himself lonely, isolated, secluded at home, at office, at school, everywhere. And this is the extreme of introvert kind of behavior, hell with the world. He will not be interested in the world. Schizoid, this is known as schizoid personality disorder. And then the third type under this cluster A, odd or eccentric cluster, is the schizotypal, one who has some kind of strange magical thinking, some kind of odd perceptions. That is, he says that I can read the minds, and has strange thought patterns. He feels that he knows when the earthquake will come, when the government will fall, when the floods will come, when the end of the world will come. He has all sorts of prophecies to make, all sorts of magical thinking, odd perceptions, which you outrightly feel that these are odd kind of perceptions. This is known as schizotypal disorder, schizotypal personality disorder. So his language, his whatever he expresses and whatever he speaks will have some kind of odd things. You will find it odd and magical. And then comes the cluster B, or the impulsive and dramatic cluster. Under this comes the first is the histrionic personality disorder. Histrionic means one who is always dramatic, exhibitionist, look at me attitude, a charmer, who would always wear such kind of dresses so as to attract attention, would wear jewelry or would make up in such a manner to attract attraction. And he would like to be at the center of attraction. If the attention is not diverted to him or her, then they will start feeling frustrated, and they will become overly emotional and dramatic, whether they are in parties or at work or in the social gatherings. They would always try to grab attention of everyone around. They would try to dress up in such a manner or show up in such a manner. For example, if somebody is driving a car, he would play the music in the loudest form and then zoom through the roads and by lanes in a manner to grab attention. That's a histrionic kind of a behavior, histrionic personality disorder. So this is the extreme of extrovertness. While as schizoid was the extreme of introvertness, histrionic personality disorder is the extreme condition of the extrovert, one who is too much extrovert, too much partyist, too much dramatist, too much exhibitionist, overly emotional, all the time emotional. And at one point of time, he will be, very high, speak high of you. Immediately thereafter, he will speak very low of you. He may denigrate and humiliate you. Then there is the narcissistic kind of personality disorder. Narcissistic, I am the most important. Nobody is like me. Nobody is equal to me. He is overly self-obsessed, self-involved. views self as unique, who deserves special attention, and who deserves special entitlement. I should have the best room, best furniture, I should have the best compartment. So he feels that I am entitled to the best of facilities, and he feels defensive. So he is overly self-involved. If you remember, in the Greek mythology, there was a this Narcissus, who was always self-involved, and he, there were a lot of nymphs who were falling in love with him, and he would betray them. One day, one nymph, this as per the Greek mythology, that one nymph said, "May you fall in love with yourself." He cursed him that may fall with yourself. So when this Prince Narcissus one day went to a pond, he saw his own reflection in the pond and fell in love with himself. Then he fell in so much in love with himself, he felt that I am the most handsome, most beautiful person, smart person, charming person. And then he drowned him. He got drowned in that very pond. His body could not be found. And at the pyre, instead of his body, a flower was kept to represent his dead body. And he was very popular among the people. And this flower was named as Narcissus. We have a flower by the name of Narcissus. That is why we call it the narcissistic personality disorder. And many who are always self-involved and they think that they are the best, they are the most entitled people, and who deserve special attention. Most of these dictators like Nero, Hitler, and Saddam Hussein and others, they are being thought to have been suffering from this kind of personality disorder, because all these kinds of dictators, they are self-obsessed, and they always try to dictate and rule over others through force. They try to crush others, and that is because of some kind of narcissistic personality disorder. They have these traits in themselves. Then third type of personality disorder in this category is the antisocial. Rules are for fools. A person who always tries to break rules, who is always deceitful, who tries to cheat, manipulate people, who has a history of misconduct during his childhood, and is always deceptive. He would always try to cheat, he would try to manipulate, be deceitful, he will have deceptive appearances, he will change quite frequently, he will have conduct problems in childhood, and that is what is known as antisocial disorder. So he will not follow the rules. You have a student in the class who would never give his assignment in time, who would never appear in internal assessment in time, who would not follow your instructions. That is an antisocial kind of a behavior, and mostly it emanates from the family background. It is believed that such people have undergone abuse in the childhood, or their parents were also suffering from this kind of disorder. So he tries to emulate the behavior of his parents or his adults in the family, and they were also equally deceitful, or their parents or adults were also equally manipulative, and they were also trying to cheat people, corrupt, and amass money through fraudulent means, things like that. Then fourth kind of personality disorder in this cluster B is the borderline personality disorder, in which there is a pervasive inability in moods, there is a pervasive instability in the interpersonal relationships, in the self-image. They have a very low self-esteem. Immediately this self-esteem can break, they can become emotional, they can start crying, they will become moody, and they always fear abandonment. They mostly feel empty, and often try to self-mutilate. They often try to attempt suicide. They often find victimhood syndrome. They think that they are the victims who have been punished by all the people, victimized by all the people, and then they quite often become angry. So this is known as borderline disorder. There's a pervasive instability in their moods. Sometimes the mood is quite elated, and suddenly the mood falls down. They become depressed. So there is a pervasive instability in the mood, and they are very, they immediately break, and if you touch their raw nerve, they will break and they will start crying, they will start weeping. And this is because they feel empty, they have a low self-esteem. This is known as borderline, because the next step is it will switch over to schizophrenia. Then it is borderline the schizophrenia, and then it can get converted into a psychiatric illness, which is a schizophrenia if it aggravates. Now coming to the cluster C, which is the anxious or fearful cluster. In this, you have three types of personality disorders. One is avoidant, one who is too shy to function, always tries to avoid the things. Suppose you have a student who would always like to stay away stay at the last bench behind someone else, who wouldn't like to be seen or noticed by you, who wouldn't like to be given some kind of assignment, given some kind of responsibility. They don't have initiative. They lack that leadership quality, that initiative. They are very sensitive to interpersonal rejection. That is the main reason. If they think that if I take the initiative, I may be criticized, I may commit a mistake, I may be punished, and they are very sensitive to it. They are very sensitive to interpersonal rejection, criticism, effacing, and therefore they shy away from taking any responsibility, taking any initiative, coming to the front, or leading the group. They will try to avoid any such kind of situation, and they will try to stay in have a low profile, and they would not like to come to the limelight. That is what is known as avoidant kind of a personality disorder. Now, some kind of avoidance all of us may have, but when it crosses the limits and becomes a problem, so much so that it affects the normal routine functioning of the person and normal relationships, then only we call it an avoidant personality disorder. Then you have the dependent. You have some sort of students who are always dependent on others. Take care of me. They would not do anything of their own. They would not have any initiative, and they will always try to be attached to someone else. For example, they have to pursue a course. They will say, if my friend goes to do this course, then only I will do. And they want to prepare for the exams. They will do it in association with others. They will not do it independently. So they will always be dependent. They will not be self-reliant. They will have difficulty in being alone. They will doesn't like to end relationships. And if someone, God forbid, abandons him or dumps him, then he will be crushed. He will be devastated, because they always depend on their friends, on their relationships, and they trust a lot, expect a lot. And when somehow their expectations are not met, they are devastated. And if someone abandons them or dumps them, they feel like end of the world. They may even commit suicide at such occasions. So these people are mostly people pleasing, appeasing the people, appeasing the bosses, appeasing the friends. They want to keep them in good humor. They want to have good relationship so that they can be kept together. कुछ लोग उनको चिपको बोलते हैं, चिपको, जो हमेशा चिपके रहते हैं, दूसरों के साथ छोड़ते नहीं है. आप पीछा छुड़ाना चाहते हैं मगर पीछा नहीं छोड़ते वो. So then the last one is the obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Obsessive compulsive is also a psychiatric disorder. When it crosses the limit, it becomes an obsessive compulsive disease, which is a psychiatric illness. So in that obsessive compulsive, you are following, you want to have orderliness, perfection in everything. If this book is to be kept here, it should be kept here only, on the first shelf, not on the second shelf. If your shoe is to be kept on the first rack, it should not be moved to the second rack. So they want perfectionism in everything, orderliness in everything. They want to follow the rules. They cannot tolerate mixing of one thing with another. They want to keep things separate. And if suppose you might have noticed that some people, before going to bed, they check the lights 10 times. They switch it on, then switch it off, then again switch it on, again switch it off. This is obsessive compulsive disorder. Or somebody is told to close the tap, water tap. He will close it, open it, and repeat it 10 times. Similarly, we have some people, for example, we have one person in the university who has to check the locks at the evening. He checks the lock, moves 10 steps away, then comes back to check it again. Then again moves 10 steps away and again comes back. And this kind of disorder is known as obsessive. They're obsessed with it, and they cannot help it but to repeat the same thing again and again. So they do it compulsively. They do it out of compulsion, they don't have control over it, out of obsession. And when these people, they are very much particularly concerned about details, about orderliness, perfection, rules, about difficulty. They cannot relax. They cannot have fun. They cannot, move away from the daily routine. This kind of disorder is known as obsessive compulsive disorder. If he will sit at one place throughout the year, he will not change that place, and he will not allow anybody to make any changes in his daily routine. That is what is known as a obsessive compulsive disorder. So I will then leave some few minutes for question answers. I will by showing you this picture. This is a parking lot. So from this parking lot, you can make out who is suffering from what kind of disorder. Let us try to find out from this parking lot who is suffering from what kind of disorder. So in the picture, you can see number one, serial number one at the left top corner. The car has been parked in a way as if he feels that I have been cornered. This particular person who has parked his car here, suddenly some other car has come in front of him, and now he feels that I have been cornered. So paranoid, always suspicious, always feels that they are being followed, they are being persecuted, they are being observed, they are being doubted. That is what is meant by a paranoid disorder. And the second one is the narcissistic. Narcissistic is I'm the most important. So as I said, that the dictators of the world. So this narcissist number two, serial number two, the purple colored, he has the largest car, which has the most prominent hood ornament, most prominent color, most prominent stickers on it, so as to show that he is the most important person. Then in the picture number three, the two cars are adjacently parked ones to each other, and they are very closely situated to each other, so dependent. This kind of a person who has a dependent personality disorder always needs others to care for him, always needs others to feel sheltered. Otherwise, he cannot remain lonely. He will feel insecure when he is alone. He will try to park his car along with another car. That is number three. Then coming to number four is an earlier disorder which was classified earlier in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, but has been removed now. Passive aggressive. Passive aggressive means androhumal. Kaam dimos karin kaam kari magar tithpat kari so patrai voinish insan dabe mission yi kaum izora. So aap usko kaam aise wo itna slow, he will be so slow and so sluggish and so imperfect in his work that you won't feel like giving him any work again. He will be passive, he will not be active, and he will be aggressive. So he will be agitated. So here you see number four, this man has parked his car in the middle, neither to the left slot nor to the right parking slot. He is in the middle. That way he has blocked both the slots. This is passive kind of behavior. Angles the car to take two spaces. So this is the passive aggressive kind of behavior. When a person is not doing his job perfectly, he always tries to create a fuss. He's a nuisance monger. In nutshell, he is a nuisance monger, always nuisance mongering. Then fifth is the borderline personality disorder, where I said he is moody, he is having this magical thinking and odd perceptions, and suddenly he will be impulsive. He will ram into the car of an ex-friend or ex-lover. So he will see someone, some enemy on the street, and he will start banging him, hitting him, shouting over him, and or slamming him. This is what is known as borderline personality disorder, serial number 5. Suddenly he has rammed into another car because he feels that this man is my enemy. So he becomes very impulsive, can't control his emotions. Then number 6 is antisocial. He is blocking the other car. His intention is simply to block the other car so that the other person cannot remove or take away his car. So antisocial, he wants to break the rules. He doesn't go to his own slot. He would just sit in front of another car. And mujhe ji aise hi karna hai. Matlab he doesn't care. And then 7 is the histrionic. Histrionic, as I said, a partyist, an exhibitionist, a dramatist who always wants to be at the center stage as a center of attractions. Now see, car number 7 is parked right in the middle. He wants to grab attention of all the cars around. So he is not parking at his right place. He is trying to grab the attention, being a dramatist, being a ritualist, being an exhibitionist. That ritualistic kind of behavior, that exhibitionist kind of behavior is known as histrionic, which is the extreme of extrovert. And then obsessive kind of behavior, perfect alignment in pairs, obsessive compulsive. The one which I told you checks the tap 10 times. One I told you who checks the switch, puts on and off the switch 10 times and repeats it again and again. This is what is known as ritualistic behavior. It becomes a ritual for him, going and coming again, going and coming again. And then now you can see at car number 8, exactly the same amount of space at the left as is on the right, exactly the same amount of space on the front as is on the back. There is the perfect geometry in how he has parked his car. And this kind of geometry or perfectionism is followed in all walks of life. They want to be regular and they want to be perfect in everything that they do. And then the 9th is the avoidant, trying to be away from all the cars in a distant corner, secluded, isolated, where nobody would notice them, where nobody would observe them. That is an avoidant kind of a behavior, hides in a corner, doesn't take initiative, doesn't take lead, doesn't adopt, and doesn't take any leadership behaviors. And then 10 is the schizoid, where it's the extreme of introvert behavior. So a person can't tolerate closeness to others. He is even going beyond the parking lot. He has crossed the limits of the parking lot. He wants to be so away from the people, so secluded, so isolated that he can't even mix up, he can't socialize, he can't make friends, he can't share things. And lastly, the 11 is the schizotypal, which I did not explain, and again, which has been removed from the diagnostic and statistical manual. Schizotypal is the one where one is feeling intergalactic parking, as if it is not a car, as if it is some kind of a satellite which he is going to take off. And this parking will be also, his car will look like a satellite. So this is a schizotypal. Again, it is borderline the schizophrenia. If it crosses the limits, it will switch over to schizophrenia. So I'm sorry, I don't have time to explain then how to handle these kind of situations. You can find these kind of students in the class with these kinds of behavioral traits, personality traits. So you are the best judge how exactly to handle it, because as I said, ethic of care is important. First, you must understand them, you must know them. Only when you know and understand them, then you can decide what best to do, how best to guide them towards counseling, how best to guide them towards this treatment if required, medical interventions if required. But in these cases, mostly it is the counseling which works. Didactic behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, group therapy, the psychoanalytical therapy, various types of talk therapies which work, counseling works, because the idea in that counseling is that we want to give them the coping strategies. We want to identify where, which kind of thoughts are deviating him, and to come out of those thought patterns and to come out of those vicious cycles. And we would need to bring them out of that vicious cycle of thought, behavior, attitude, and the personality disorder. So therefore, the thrust is on counseling and then giving them coping strategies, how to cope up with those kind of thoughts which deviate them from the normal behavior. And so only a clinical psychiatrist or a psychologist can do it, but you can help understand the student, you can help understand his behavior and guide him towards the proper direction. So I will stop at this point. So, and would invite any questions. If there are any questions, you may please feel free to ask any questions.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, I need one clarification about this personality disorder. Sir, I want to know whether this personality disorder, it is always born or evolved in the environment or society or surrounding, or it has got some genetical background or hereditary?
Yes, very good question, very important question. It has both the things are involved in personality disorder, genetic traits, genetic, these SNPs, what we call as expressions, genetic expressions, both genetic expressions, genetic traits, as well as the environment in which a person is born and raised. Both are important. If somebody has certain traits in his genes, for example, he has tendencies to become an antisocial, then he will always try to become an antisocial personality disorder. But then there are certain disorders like schizotypal or borderline. This usually happens with the kind of atmosphere in which you are born, in which you are grow up, in which you live your life. If you are living in a conflict-ridden situation, for example, there is always in a situation, there is war-like situation or riots are there, and people are dying and people are being ill-treated, then of course it will lead to good number of personality traits which are abnormal. It will lead to borderline or schizotypal kind of personality disorder. So both these things, and how a child is born, in what condition, suppose a child has undergone abuse or rape in the early childhood, definitely there will be some kind of personality disorder in the adulthood. So that matters a lot. Both these things play, all these things play a role, where the genetic makeup of the person, the environment he is born, in which he lives, and what kind of adaptations he makes in his lifetime, what kind of circumstances he goes through in his lifetime, that shape up his personality. As I said, there are 4 layers, right from the time one is born, that is layer 1. Then until layer 4, what he experiences and adopts in his lifetime, that shapes up his personality.
Thank you, sir.
Any other question?
Yes, sir. I want a clarification. Sir.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Assalamu
Hello,
alaikum.
sir.
Yes, Dr. Samir Mohideen wants to ask
Yes,
something.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir. Yes, sir.
yes, please.
Sir, it was very informative about the personality type as we understood. Sir,
Thank you.
but I have an observation that there are some people or there are some students who are shy type and they feel pleasure when they मतलब दूसरों को अपने बारे में गलत तस्वीर पैदा करने में उनको मजा आता है. They remain silent even when they know everything. And they prefer to be at the last bench of the classroom, or they make a show of that they know nothing, when the fact
Right.
is that they know everything. And then how can we put that introversion into a bad five, as you compare big five and bad
So,
five?
yeah, it is, yeah, big five and bad five, it is not really a very, very distinguished, and it is not a very compartmentalized situation. There is lot of overlap in these traits. I forgot to tell you, there is lot of overlap, not only in the traits, but also in the disorders. Personality disorders, there is a lot of overlap, as well as in the personality traits, there is a lot of overlap. It is very hard to demarcate. It is very hard to compartmentalize that this person is suffering from disorder, he is not suffering. But because there are certain things, for example, being anxious at certain situations is absolutely normal. Suppose you have to face a interview or examination, or you have to go to a party, or you have to make a speech. It is quite normal to be anxious at such situations. But when it affects your personality, your performance, your relationship, then it becomes a disorder. But it is very hard. So you gave an example of a student who knows well, who has good amount of knowledge, but remains aloof and remains distant. So because again, he may be having an avoidant kind of a personality disorder, which does not permit him to open up, which does not permit him to show up and express his abilities and express his knowledge. But then again, he may need some kind of counseling to overcome what stops him, because there may be some inhibition, some kind of obstruction in expressing, and only because such it depends a lot on how he was brought up. Suppose he was brought up in a situation wherein his parents always suppressed him. His parents did not allow him to speak in front of others, in front of the relations, and they suppressed him, and so much so that now throughout his life he feels suppressed. He doesn't want to express. So either he may be suffering from this kind of avoidant kind of a personality disorder, or he may be suffering from a dependent kind of a personality disorder. So only through counseling we can get to know what are his obstructions, what are his inhibitions, what prevents him from expressing things, and what prevents him from taking initiatives. Counseling will be the best possible at the initial level. The teacher can do the counseling. If he feels the need, he can refer him to a psychological counselor, which actually every school or every college must have it. Now, fortunately, these higher education people have established a psychological counseling cells in many district level colleges, but every educational institution needs to have a psychological counselor. If need arises, then he can even be referred to a psychiatrist.
Sir, if I am not wrong, that we can say that the extremeness in introversion or extroversion is personality disorder. Am I right, sir?
Neither being introvert is abnormal, nor being extrovert is abnormal. It is absolutely fine if somebody doesn't like to have too many relationships. It is also absolutely fine if somebody wants to socialize. But when it becomes extreme, yes, when it crosses that thin line, when it crosses the limit, so much so that it affects your relationships everywhere, whether in school or in college or at office or at home, and then if it starts affecting your performance also, then it becomes a disorder. And that is where it needs some kind of counseling or some kind of intervention, and that is where it needs to be counseled, and the person needs some kind of hand holding.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, any other question?
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Sir, my question is, what is the most common personality disorder? If a person comes to know that he or she is suffering from personality disorder, what should be done to overcome from this disorder?
Actually, there are not many studies to say that which is the most common disorder, but yes, borderline, schizotypal, antisocial are believed to be some of the common disorders. Because these have very thin lines of demarcation, and then other next to follow are the histrionic, paranoid, and the this avoidant kind of disorder. But to know what, because a person can himself, first of all, you can judge yourself, or the person can judge himself depending upon the diagnostic and statistical manual. The diagnostic and statistical manual has given symptoms of each disorder. And then they say if you have 5 out of 10 disorders over a period of say 3 months, then you are suffering from this disorder. They have clearly mentioned in the diagnostics and statistical manual, for every disorder, they have given a set of symptoms. For example, if there are 10 symptoms, out of 10, they say if we are having 5 symptoms over a period of say 6 months, then you are suffering from this kind of disorder. So only a doctor can judge that. Only a psychiatrist can judge that. We may not be able to use the diagnostic and statistical manual, but at least if we have certain deviances, if you have certain deviations from the normal behavior and your relationships are getting affected, your personal performance is getting affected, you can think about going for some kind of counseling by a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, and he alone can diagnose it.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Alaikum salam. Yes,
Sir,
Dr. Zahid.
I have a question. How are these development personality related to cognition?
Yes, personality related to cognition means cognition includes learning ability, cognition includes understanding of situation, and cognition also includes the comprehension, the understanding of the people. Can you please mute yourself?
Yes.
Cognition includes the understanding yourself, your surroundings. Then it includes having the right kind of comprehension and understanding about people, about circumstances, about the world. And then the learning and understanding, the ability to learn, the ability to remember, ability to understand and perceive things well. That is what covers the cognition component. So if somebody has difficulty understanding, difficulty learning, and if then it could be a psychiatric disorder. If somebody has, it could be, there are organic and non-organic psychiatric disorders. Organic are the ones wherein there is some organic malfunction in the brain. Either there is some derangement of some kind of enzyme, hormone, or some physical abnormality. Non-organic means where there is no physical abnormality, for example, schizophrenia, but still there is a problem. So only a psychiatrist can tell you whether you have any issues or whether the person has any issues with his cognition, with his perception, with his effectiveness, or with his understanding, comprehension. But it is all about thoughts, behavior, perception, and cognition. If any of these 4 domains are not functioning well, a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist can guide him what to do, what kind of therapy to adopt, whether to go for counseling or to go for medical interventions.
Secondly, is there any correlation between these personality disorders and the cognitive development? Maybe somebody has a poor cognitive development, he may not be having a disorder at all.
Yes, that is quite possible, because everybody does not have the same emotional coefficient, same intelligence coefficient. Some people are born intelligent, some are not. Some people acquire good intelligence through learning, some people cannot. So there are variations in cognitive domain. It's not same. We cannot have a same yardstick for all the people. So somebody may be born slightly less with less abilities of comprehension and less intelligence coefficient, but that doesn't mean he is suffering from any personality disorder. So as I said, it is a thin line when to demarcate someone as having a disorder and when to say that this is quite normal. Being less intelligent or being less emotional is quite okay, but it can get into this personality disorder when you cross the limit. And when it starts affecting your daily performance and your relationship and everything else. When normal development of a person in a society, his normal associations with the society and his normal connections with the other social domains are getting affected, then he can think of maybe he has a personality disorder. Otherwise, it's quite normal.
Furthermore, sir, has there been any experimental study regarding this estimation of the correlation between cognitive development and personality disorders in literature?
Yes, if you search the literature, you can find. If you search the literature, I haven't searched for it, therefore I haven't come across for any such study. But definitely there must be some studies which would have looked into the cognitive development and eruption of a personality disorder, because cognition is one of the important components of a personality. So if there is a problem in the cognition, there could be a problem in the personality too. But you need to search the literature, and you will find some studies on this probably.
Thank you, sir. Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So, Dr. Mudassir, can we conclude the session now, because we are, it is already lunch time.
Yes, sir.
And you
Thank
have to
you
come
very
back
much.
at 2.
Sir, thank you very much for such a motivational and informative lecture on personality disorder and role of teachers as a caregivers. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. There were Dr. Abid Hussain Rafiqui. Others can leave. Those who want to take lunch or go for prayers can leave. Abid Hussain Rafiqui and Neeraj Kumar Ranjan can ask their question. I will answer. And there were also some questions in the chat box. I will look into it. Then I will try to answer back later. But Abid Hussain Rafiqui and Dr. Neeraj Kumar can ask. The rest of the people can leave. They can go for lunch.
Sir, I have already asked.
Okay, you have asked. Dr. Neeraj Kumar Ranjan, yes, please.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible.
Sir, understanding of human behavior is really very complex process, and you have very well explained about this aspect, and especially by giving the car example. But my question is that then what kind of personality disorder you have talked about this? Then when I analyze about the persons who are coming in touch of me, then I think that all of the person coming in touch of in touch with me, or including me, are having such type of personality disorder. So is it correct to analyze or interpret like this, sir?
Yes, this is the question which most often I have faced while talking about these personality disorders. Whenever I have delivered a talk on this topic, most of the participants at the end of the lecture would say, I myself have some of these traits which you have mentioned in the talk, and they will start wondering whether they are also suffering from some kind of personality disorder. No, it is not that all the people are suffering from disorder is not correct. But yes, you may have some kind of traits. It is all about striking a balance. We need to strike a balance between different kinds of emotions, behaviors, thoughts, and actions. As long as we are able to maintain a balance, strike a balance, we are not suffering from any kind of disorder. The moment we lose balance, the moment we start deranging our जो हमारी ट्रेन है पटरी से जब उतर जाती है, तभी इसको पर्सनैलिटी डिसऑर्डर कहा जा सकता है. बट एज लॉन्ग एज जब तक हमारी ट्रेन पटरी पे चल रही है, बिना किसी रुकावट के, बिना किसी हिचकिचाहट के, तब तक ये सब ठीक है. Our life is a mix of everything. I mean, nobody is perfect. Everybody has some ups and downs, and everybody has plus and minus traits. Somebody has good qualities. All of us have our own strengths, our own weaknesses. So we should look at the strengths of others and ourselves, and we should not take too much notice of the weaknesses. When it comes to introspection, we should look at our own weaknesses. But in others, we should try to find out the strengths, the positives. But all of us have our own strengths, all of us have our own weaknesses, and we have to learn to live with those strengths. And as yesterday, Professor Mehrajdeen Saab said, learn to evolve, learn to live, learn to be, and learn to live together. So we can learn to live together only when we appreciate we accept the people along with their weaknesses, along with their shortcomings, and then only we can learn to live together amicably and in an egalitarian, equitable society. Okay, Dr. Neeraj, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll end this meeting. Please be back at 2 because Professor G. Sudha will be joining at 2. All of you are requested to please be in time. So at this moment, I will end this meeting, and thank you very much for being with me. Thanks a lot for your patient audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir.
Yes, Dr. Aslam.
Yes, sir. When I have to submit this discuss the presentation, sir.
Yes, today.
I was supposed to have it on 24th of March.
No,
I have no problem.
That is the old schedule. Now you will present today only. Be ready.
Sir, I can present even today, but in non-slide mode.
Okay, you be ready. Let us see whether time permits us or not.
Okay, sir. Okay, I can even present today, sir.
Okay. No issue.
Non-slide mode. Okay, sir.